position. Rise up, make that decision. God will provide all your needs. He wants you to succeed. Have faith of a mustard seed. Get up on your feet. Rise up.
Welcome to another segment of the Drexwell Seymour Show. I try to cover as many diverse topics as possible to educate you, the viewers, and also to educate myself. And today we're going to talk about occupational therapy. And I have as my guest Charles Robbins. She also spent some time in the Turks and Caicos Islands as well. She's now in the Bahamas, where she was born. But her mom is from Turks and Caicos, actually. In fact, her mom was a Seymour before she got married. So that's my family. And so I'm grateful for this opportunity to have Charles on. I really appreciate the opportunity because, she could have been doing something else. And with that said, I want to welcome Charles Robbins, Miss Charles Robbins, to the Drexwell Seymour Show. Charles, thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So, like Mr. Seymour said, my name is Charles Robbins. I was born in the Bahamas, but I'm a Turks and Caicos belonger. And yes, I started my career in 2001, right here in Nassau, Bahamas, as an occupational therapist. I got my occupational therapy professional degree at Florida A&M University, which is an historically Black college and university, HBCU. Then I came back here to the Bahamas and I started working for the government sector. I matriculated from an entry-level therapist all the way up to the highest point in my career, which was the Deputy Director of Rehab Services responsible for occupational therapy. And I know you would ask, well, you said Deputy Director. At that time, that was actually the highest position in rehab services when I got that appointment.
That is awesome.
After that, I worked there, I think, 11 years, and then I left to become a private practitioner. I do have extra education or certifications in pediatrics and neurodevelopmental treatment. And so I started a pediatric clinic called Genius Soul, where we provided occupational therapy, speech and language pathology, and behavioral therapy for children with disabilities.
Okay.
After that, that's when I moved to Turks and Caicos, and I assisted a small school there with a startup where they also provided services for children with special needs. And I was the occupational therapist there for some years. And then I moved back to the Bahamas, and here I am again. Just rebranding Genius Soul. So it's now a nonprofit organization, and we are still servicing persons, but we're now doing it from the cradle to the grave. So
Awesome.
From children on up to adulthood and geriatrics.
Awesome. And I read somewhere that you are the president of the OT in the Bahamas, right?
Yes. So I am the president of the Bahamas Occupational Therapy Association. Well, it's the Occupational Therapy Association of the Bahamas. That's the correct name for it. We call it OTAB. And so I got that. I was elected to that position this year, 2022.
Okay. Charles, could I call you Charles? That's fine?
Yes, definitely.
Roberts. Okay, before we get into the occupational therapy, what prompted you to study that?
It's a very funny story.
Really?
So yes, I was an athlete in high school, believe it or not.
Really?
And yes.
Good for you.
A good one, a very good athlete at that.
Good for you. Mm-hmm.
And I got an injury and I had to go and see a physical therapist. And I was like, I think I like that profession. And so I went off to junior college to play volleyball. And my field of study at that time was pre-physical therapy. And then when I did my volunteer hours, I realized that physical therapy was a bit repetitive. And I said, you know something, knowing my character, I don't think I could do this for a very long time based on what I saw.
Mm-hmm.
But I have great respect for the profession of physical therapy. And I said, you know what, I'm going to change my profession. And Now, I wanted to be a teacher,
Me
but
too.
my father said, you cannot go off to America for school and do something that you could have done. And it was called the College of the Bahamas at the time. He said, you can't go off to America and do something that you could have done at the College of the Bahamas. So take advantage of doing something different, that opportunity. So I said, okay. And I literally just flipped through the book and I saw this thing said occupational therapy. And I said, okay, I'm going to try that. And so when I came back home for the summer, I volunteered at the Sandilands Rehabilitation Center, which is the mental health institution here in the Bahamas. And I absolutely enjoyed my time there. I was only supposed to do 40 hours. I think I put in about 150 hours.
Because
That's how
you like what you did.
I really enjoyed it. And so that's where my passion for occupational therapy was ignited. And the rest is history.
That is amazing. I did an interview earlier with someone, and she was talking about how she lost the election, but something good came out of it because she was able to discover something else as a result, and so it helped her. And
Yeah,
so it's amazing. So that injury that happened probably was designed so that you could go into this field.
definitely.
Yeah. So what is, for persons watching, and even for me, what exactly is occupational therapy? What is that?
So we call occupational therapy an art and a science because what we do is always based on scientific research, but is an art because it is designed specifically to suit the need of the person that is needing the therapy. So, for example, let's say that you had an injury and it left you unable to speak. Although that is a speech therapy issue, an occupational therapist would be the person to come in and say, you know what, you would love to continue to do your talk show, but we have to find a way to help you to continue that. And what do we do? Well, we say, maybe we could have you write and have someone else speak, or we could do typing and it can show up across the board. So we come up with these innovative ways to make sure that you can still continue with the art of living despite any injury or illnesses you would have had.
So that's why it's called Okay, so that's where the occupational come in.
Yes, occupation is the job of living. So no matter
Oh,
what your role is, it could
I,
be your vocation, it could be your role as a parent, your role, your spirituality, you name it, even in your leisure activities. So a runner, a tennis player, any type of recreation, definitely occupation is just the art of living or the job of living.
so that makes sense now. I understand now how the wording occupational therapy ties in. That's amazing. Now, I know you, because when you it's not just that you what I gather though is that this therapy is for basically all aspects. Because
Yes,
I
all
see where you also involve persons with autism. Is that
autism.
correct?
Yes, autism, persons who are even addicted to drugs, persons that
Really?
are diagnosed with schizophrenia, persons with dementia, persons who suffer from depression because of job loss, even this new learning loss that they say that our students have because of the pandemic. An occupational therapist is very critical in roles like that as well because they have lost the ability to do something that they were doing before.
Oh wow. So tell us about the autism aspect, because autism is growing so much. At least it appears it's growing a lot. Because well, we never heard much about autism growing up. Maybe we did have it, but we just didn't know the diagnosis.
Mm.
Tell us, what do you do as an occupational therapy to
Okay, so
improve autism or to help with autism?
So one of the first things that we do as an occupational therapist is an intake assessment that
Okay.
tells us where the person is functioning. So regardless of the diagnosis, persons have strengths and weaknesses. And so that's what the assessment does. It tells us what the child or the adult is strong in and what they're weak in. Once we do that assessment, and that assessment is done with the child, the parent, and even sometimes the teacher, depending on the environment the child is in. Once we do that assessment, we come up with goals. And those goals are usually life skills goals. So we call them activities of daily living. So they would include feeding, dressing, education, being able to sit and attend. That would even include vocation or pre-vocational skills, work skills, transitioning from teenager to adulthood across the lifespan. We start to develop goals for these persons depending on their age so that they would be able to function in their environments as independent as possible. So I say that we maximize their functional capacity. And so we don't try to cure the autism. We just ensure that the person is able to function in their environment. So for an example, you may have children diagnosed with autism that are picky eaters. An occupational therapist would determine whether that is a sensory issue, where they just cannot take the texture, the taste, the smell, or it might be a behavior issue. I'm eating with my eyes. So this is what I'm accustomed to eating, and I don't want to try anything else. And so we develop a treatment protocol or treatment plan so that we could expand the child's dietary needs as it relates to nutrition so that they can grow appropriately. And they're not lacking anything that's important to their growth, to their health, things of that nature. We don't say, oh, we want the child to eat everything. We just make sure that they're eating enough or sufficient to take care of their everyday nutritional needs.
Okay, awesome.
So that's one aspect of what we do, but it's a myriad of things that we would do because, like I said before, it is the job of living. So anything that's been affected is how we try to work with it. Some children with autism cannot speak. And like I said, I'm not a speech therapist, but some of the things that we will do in occupational therapy will enhance the motivation to use sign language, to use body language, or even to try to vocalize their needs.
Mm-hmm. Do you have some testimony? Do you have some examples, or can you share with us some things you've seen that improved as a result of you being an occupational therapist? Can you share with us some examples?
Definitely. Over the years, I have had many success stories that I could only sum up to the grace of God.
Yeah.
Because it's been so miraculous in some aspects. He's an adult now, but when I met him, he was 4 years old, and he couldn't go outside because he didn't sweat. If he was overheated, he would have a seizure. He had no language and no skill set at all. Now he's a man, and he's able to dress himself. He actually is engaged in several sports, including swimming, bike riding, and tennis. And all of that came through exposure for occupational therapy. Just recently, I had a 4-year-old come to me, and there are many things that's going on. But one of the major things that I thought to address is the fact that the child could not feed himself. And within a week, his mother was sending me videos of him actually feeding himself at home.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
And I, like I said, I can't take credit. I have to give credit to God because it always seems as if it's a miracle.
Yeah. I mean, he's using you with your knowledge, though. God is using you with your knowledge,
definitely.
to help.
Definitely. Yes. And it doesn't happen overnight. One of the things that I tell family members is that we have to be grateful for small victories. Parents always come and say, so what is going to happen in the long run? I don't have control over that.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you what has happened for one child or one family, but I can't give you the course of your child's life. But I can tell you that these are the things that we can work on today.
Mm-hmm.
And when we succeed, we move on to something else. There was a family member that I spoke to because I also practice in Grand Bahama.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a family member that I had spoken to. The child had just recently got a diagnosis. And as far as the diagnosis went, they said the child was nonverbal. During the assessment, we found that the child had a lot of sensory issues. And I talked about feeding. This child would not eat anything at all. They just preferred liquid. And once we got the child eating, the child started making sounds. And so in autism, sometimes we call these sounds a stim. which is like a self-stimulating behavior. And so that is what the parent was thinking that it was. And I said, no, you best listen intently, because I think that the child is humming a tune. And the mother found out maybe about 2 weeks later, the particular song that this child was actually humming. It was not a stem. The child was humming a tune. And once we started singing that song along with the child, do you know that that child started singing along as well? So this
Oh,
child's
amazing.
diagnosis had changed from nonverbal to verbal. This child is now in a regular school, doing regular work and functioning, still has a diagnosis, but functioning in a typical classroom.
Well, you must be very satisfied when you see the results from these individuals that you provide therapy to. That must be very satisfying for you.
Definitely, definitely. And I'm most excited for the parents,
Oh
because once
yes,
they get a diagnosis, sometimes they feel like that's a dead end. And so when they see their child achieving goals, it makes them excited to see more and more progress. And when you couple that faith with good work, miracles happen.
that's right. That's right. Do you know if there are any occupational therapists in Turks and Caicos?
Not not that I know of. I know that there was a recent advertisement for an occupational therapist, but I don't know if one has been hired.
Mhm. You probably got quite a bit in the Bahamas, right?
Well, actually, we're growing. It's
Mhm.
growing. When I first came home, I was one of only two occupational therapists in country.
Oh,
And so now we've grown to approximately 13 occupational therapists and occupational therapy assistants
mhm,
between Nassau and Grand Bahama. So
mhm,
there's only one occupational therapy assistant on the island of Grand Bahama now. And we have Doctors Hospital has occupational therapists, which is the private hospital here in the Bahamas.
mhm,
Princess Mark Hospital has it. Sandilands Rehabilitation has it, and there are about 4 or 5 working privately now. So we've
mhm.
grown within the time span that